You're listening to the Escape into Gaming podcast with your host, Nathan, aka Kilnieth. Join us as we explore escapism into the various weird and wonderful worlds of video games. Whether it's something immersive and first person, or something deep and strategic, we will be escaping boredom, stress, pain, and pressure with dragons, racing, space, and sneaking. And without further ado, let's get started.
Hello and welcome to episode 4 of the Escape into Gaming podcast, where we explore and deep dive into escapism within video games. In this week's episode, I'd like to start off by saying that I would absolutely love if at the start of episodes we can go over some listener questions or comments. That'd be a really cool thing, like if you can tell me your stories of games that you've been playing recently, games that you love to escape into. I think that'd be a really cool thing to start off the shows with, especially seeing as after the first attempt of trying gaming news, there hasn't really been any impactful gaming news as of late, so that's been cut a little bit short. But yeah, like every other episode, we'll also be going over some games that I'm currently playing at the moment, and of course in this week's episode our focus game is going to be The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess. So in terms of games that I am currently playing, I actually continued playing the System Shock 1 and 2 remakes. I mentioned it in last week's podcast that the Deus Ex episode kind of made me scratch my head a little bit, and I was looking at my Steam library saying, hold on, I've got System Shock 1 and I've got System Shock 2, I've got the remakes of both of them, but I've never actually finished those games. So I actually started off with System Shock 2, the 25th anniversary remaster, I think it's called, or the 20th anniversary remaster, because they fixed the multiplayer on it, which is kind of cool, but they also made it easier to run on modern systems and have upscale textures and stuff like that, which is nice, but it's still basically the exact same game as the original. But partway through playing that, I realised, hold on a minute, why am I playing System Shock 2? Well, I should probably finish System Shock 1 first. So, yeah, I started playing the System Shock 1 remaster. I did lower the combat difficulty on both of them because, holy heck, in the Shock games, it doesn't half stress me out when enemies are endlessly respawning and your ammo... It doesn't necessarily cost the same amount of ammo to down an enemy as they're going to give you in drops. So it kind of becomes a bit of a survival horror game where you're constantly battling against like which of your weapons has run dry and what weapon can you use if you run out of all ammo and stuff like that. But yeah, they are actually incredible games. The ending of System Shock 1, I think, was a bit of a disappointment. They actually changed the ending in the remaster, from what I understand. The original was one of these hacking segments where you're floating through cyberspace like a lot of the puzzles in the game. And I know in the original, Shodan's face will actually materialise over your screen in that kind of pixelated dissolve effect, if you remember, like from PowerPoint back in the day. And that just wasn't present in the remake. There was actually no pressure whatsoever towards the ending. So there was a slight disappointment then, but by God, that remaster, the level of immersion, like everything you do when you're applying a healing patch to your character, he'll actually pull it out and stick it on his arm to heal him, and that it's so, I think the word's diegetic, where like when you pick up an audio log, instead of it just disappearing from the world and popping up on screen saying, oh, new audio log, the guy actually sticks it into like a USB slot on his hand, and your little thing on your wrist will blink to say that there's a new audio log you've picked up. That was super immersive. Very, very impressed in that with that game. And then System Shock 2 remake, faithful to the original, definitely seems like a precursor to Deus Ex, especially with the RPG elements they introduced with the cybernetic modules letting you build a character that the way that you want to. I was surprised to find that when I previously had played the game, I was actually closer to the end than I thought, because I thought there was going to be a whole other section, but there wasn't. The ending of that game definitely was filled with pressure and stress, because my god. But yeah, if you haven't played them, do give them a shot. They are definitely worthwhile playing. And it started me on a bit of a immersive sim binge at the moment. I've actually gone back and started playing Dishonored 2 for the first time ever, because I remember briefly playing it. I think I played it on the Xbox One, and for some reason I just kind of bounced straight off it, and I can't tell you why, to be honest, because I'm playing it now and there's a lot of stuff where I'm like, oh wow, as if they've done this with a game. Like I remember getting on one of these carts to travel between one area of the city and another area of the city, and I was expecting a loading screen, and there wasn't one. It was just these two areas of the city that you get to explore in this kind of open segment, separated by an on-rail section. But yeah, no loading screen or anything. It just goes. So yeah, definitely employing that. But I do think in the future there may be an episode on System Shock for sure, because that is definitely a game that you can escape into. It was super, super immersive. But yeah, that's what I've been playing recently. What about yourself? What have you been playing? Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess is a game that I hold near and dear to my heart, and it's been quite interesting to me actually, because I've always asked myself why it is that I see Twilight Princess as kind of being my Zelda game out of all the different ones that exist. You know, I've played the earlier games in the series, I've played newer games in the series, but it's always Twilight Princess that I kind of see as, you know, this is my Zelda game. And it's only through researching and doing the prep work for this episode and getting my notes together that I actually realised why that is. The game was released in 2006 for the GameCube and the Wii, and I was in my third year of secondary school at the time, and the very early days of being a teenager, filled with, you know, the usual teenage angst and dealing with issues at home and even more issues at school from, you know, bullying and all that kind of stuff as well. And the game was a huge departure from the previously whimsical and colourful Wind Waker that had come before. I'd never had a GameCube myself, so I'd actually played Wind Waker at a friend's house. And obviously Wind Waker was a departure from the ones that I'd played in the past, which was Ocarina of Time and, you know, the depressive and apocalyptic Majora's Mask. And in a way, it felt a bit like Twilight Princess encompassed all of the confusing feelings that I had at the time. I was seeing the world in a bit of a darker tone, and Twilight Princess presented a bit of a darker, more grittier world. And it gives you... The game has like a sense of unease in everything that's going on, and that's what I was feeling at the time, a complete sense of unease and lack of control over where my life was going. The game is the most realistic Zelda game to date. Even newer games in the series, Skyward Sword, Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, they are not going for realism at all. They've very much gone back to the cel-shaded style following Wind Waker and such. And it's quite funny if you think about that, because we had Ocarina of Time being kind of big fantasy and such. Then we had Majora's Mask, which went much darker. Then we had Wind Waker, which went lighter. Then we had Twilight Princess, which went darker. So it kind of felt like there was going to be this seesawing dark light alternation between the series, but instead it went in a completely different direction. And I feel that, like, from Twilight Princess, because of the age I was at when it came out, I do feel like I grew up with Twilight Princess, because I started with Ocarina of Time, played Majora's Mask, but Twilight Princess felt a lot more real, a lot more mature than the earlier games in the series. And also, it's the first game where you don't play as a young version of Link. You start the game as adult Link, or equivalent to adult Link, the more mature Link. And I guess he was someone who I felt was closer to my own age group, someone who I could identify with, because I'm not like playing as a child version of Link, which I didn't enjoy too much. And obviously he's not like some old man Link or something. It was someone more relatable. It was closer to where I was in age. And thinking on it, Link was probably my biggest role model growing up. My kind of idealized version of Link how I see Link is a voiceless protagonist at the end of the day, so everyone can project their own kind of view of Link onto him. But my version was one who would always strive to help others and went about trying to right all of the wrongs in the world. So I find it quite interesting when, like, at the start of Ocarina of Time, you basically see Link being bullied in that game as well. And it's I think it's quite fitting how he embodies the Triforce of courage, allowing him to have the courage to overcome, not only the social challenges of being bullied and such, but also all the trials he goes on in the future. And in Twilight Princess, we actually see that Link is not being bullied or anything like that, but he's actually kind of seen as a role model by the village kids as well. They all look up to him, especially Tallow. Like, Tallow really, really, really wants to be Link, essentially. And in this game, Link is a bit more of a common farm boy, and he's actually got responsibilities to Ordon village where he lives. So he's helping out on the local ranch with all the rowdy goats that you end up chasing around in a bit of a mini-game. Which also introduces Link's returning steed Epona as well. And at the very start of the game, we discover that Link's kind of mentor, parent figure kind of person, Russell, he's called, is entrusting Link to deliver a present to the royal family of Hyrule, and they're planning to leave in the morning. So this incarnation of Link is around the age I was at the time, or just a bit older. He's looked up to by all the people in the village. He's got these responsibilities. And I think it's that really made this my Zelda game, because here was a version of Link that was more grounded and realistic, but also more in line with what my idealised version of Link was. So it very much was a role model to me at the time. So you can probably see why I idolised this particular version of Link so much. And it's quite funny, actually, because at the time he was basically everything I wasn't. He was beloved by the villagers, he was trusted with responsibilities, and he was just generally a brave lad who seemed to have everything all figured out. He had a solid, stable life in front of him. That would quickly change, though, because before he gets the chance to carry on and do the job of presenting a gift to the royal family, before he gets the chance to depart, Epona is, in air quotes, stolen by Beth, one of the other village kids, who basically has a go at Link for allowing her to injure a leg when we were rounding up the goats. So Beth's when we eventually find her, Beth's soothing Epona's leg in a nearby spring. So you try and go and calm things down, and the kids kind of join in and back you up and say, "Oh, well, Link ended up I think you rescue them from some goblins in the forest or something at that point. I can't quite remember, but the kids come and they've got you back, and they said, "Beth, you're being a bit too much. Calm it down." But just before you're about to leave, a horde of bokoblins break into the previously tranquil, beautiful glade, and they knock Link unconscious and capture all of the remaining children. So when Link wakes up, he chases after them, tries to follow where they went, only to come up against this like weird black wall that's got like colours shifting through it and weird symbols and stuff like that. And he's kind of stood looking at this wall, and this hand just reaches through the wall, grabs him, and pulls him inside. And that was very much a what the fuck moment. Like, this isn't the normal start to a Zelda game. What's going on here? So, in this moment, one of the worst kept secrets in the game occurs, because it's something that was plastered all over the marketing material and all of the trailers. Link kind of wakes up in this alternate world, this darker looking world, and he can barely stand or anything, and as he attempts to, he transforms into a wolf and collapses. Which, it's not as unusual as you might think, because previously in the dark world of A Link to the Past, he turned into a pink rabbit, so turning into a wolf is a bit of a market upgrade to this game's alternate world. But yeah, struggling from both the physical and mental stress of being dragged through into this weird world and turning into a wolf, Link collapses and he finds himself waking up in a dungeon. Here we meet Midna, who is going to be our companion and advisor throughout the game. Famously, with Link being a silent protagonist and not speaking in any of the games, we've always had some kind of follower with us who will essentially do the speaking for us, at least in the 3D games. So in Ocarina of Time we had Nave, we had Tattle in Majora's Mask, and the boat, the King of Red Lions in Wind Waker. And Midna, actually, she's a really interesting, quirky character. She actually rides on Link's back whilst he's in wolf form, almost treating him as her noble steed. And eventually, when you revert to human form, she actually hides in Link's shadow, and anytime you summon her, she kind of like forms out of the shadow to appear in front of you, which is really cool. But yeah, they make a bit of a deal to try and break out of this prison. So Link and Midna break out of the cell, and you go through a little bit of this sewer section, and you actually meet these ghosts, or rather the spirits of the guards that are hiding down there, and they're talking about these creatures that they can barely see and stuff like that. It's all slightly creepy. But eventually we head up into a tower in the castle and meet Princess Zelda, who explains that Hyrule's being covered in endless twilight. And before she gets much chance to explain anything else, she ushers the pair of them to leave the room because a guard is heading up the stairs. At this point, I should probably highlight that the music inside the Twilight realm is this really unique, chaotic blend of notes and sounds and stuff, and it really does help present the realm of Twilight as being this completely otherworldly place that you've found yourself. So you race away from the castle, going over the rooftop, I think. There's a segment where like wind keeps blowing, you've got to jump on this bridge. I remember that being really quite impressive at the time. You know, the thought that wind is blowing this piece of wood around and you've got to time it right and everything. But yeah, Midna eventually will transport the both of you back to Ordon Spring, where you were before you got bonked on the head by the bokoblins, and she will actually task Link with fetching her a sword and a shield for you to go on with the rest of your adventure. And this is an interesting shift in context, because you end up going back into the village that you've grown up in, who know you. They know Link. You know, he's lived there all his life, and it was previously a very friendly place. But since Link is now a wolf, he actually has to avoid the townsfolk, and it's actually quite emotional as well, because you can sneak into some of the buildings and hear conversations from them where the parents are understandably, you know, crying about the fact that their kids have all gone missing. And you'll also find Russell out and about wandering with a torch, and if you do get spotted by him, he basically chases after you, and it kind of fades to black and you come back in having escaped from him. But yeah, somebody who was previously your friend, obviously you're a wolf, you can't exactly say anything, not that Link could say anything anyway, but yeah, you've got to hide from these townfolk and sneak into the buildings and get a sword and shield. So when you return with a sword and shield to Midna, she playfully tries to wield them, and by that she wears the shield as a mask, which is she clearly wasn't intending to use them for herself. I think her intention was to give them to Link when he returns to human form, but you end up summoning the spirit of Auden Spring, and they send you on a collection quest where you've got to go around and find these tears of light in the nearby Farron woods to restore the land to its previous form before the twilight and everything. And I'm a bit conflicted on these segments. It happens throughout the game where you have to go around the area and collect the tears of light. I personally think it's quite a good way of familiarising yourself with the layout of these new areas before you're actually there in human form and, you know, finding the NPCs and doing your quests and stuff like that. But at the same time, it does become rather repetitive. And it's funny, actually, there's some segments in Skyward Sword that are basically copy-pasted this mechanic, except it's not Tears of Light in that version. But yeah, you collect all of these tears of light. Some of them are quite well hidden. You get them from these bugs that kind of crawl around. So if you don't like bugs, you won't like that segment. But yeah, when you collect them all, the spirit of the land manages to revert get rid of the twilight and revert Link back to his human form. However, he's now wearing the iconic green tunic of the hero of Legends. And it's the spirit that says this as well. He says that it's the garb of the hero of Legends, which kind of hints at the previous games being connected to this one as well. It's tenuous, but I've always considered that Twilight Princess was directly connected to Ocarina of Time, and this is before like the Hyrule Historia and the attempts at connecting the timelines and stuff like that. I always saw this as literally a sequel to Ocarina of Time. And that one of the coolest things about the tunic in this game as well is that it's actually got some chainmail underneath it, so it's not just a green shirt that is not going to provide much defense whatsoever. It's actually got a form of defense. And at this point, we are told that the nearby forest temple has fallen under dark influences and that there is something evil there that we should deal with. And I've always found it really interesting on Twilight Princess because many of the temples actually feature their own story. They're not just locations that you visit as the player and you're the only person who ever steps foot in them, essentially. They're kind of like the water temple in Ocarina of Time where Outro's in there. Many of the temples in Twilight Princess are actually connected to other characters who you'll either rescue or assist, or in one instance you actually fight one of the people in the temple. So they feel a lot more real, like they're actually real places in the world. And the world as a whole, like once you've completed the forest temple and helped the monkeys out, who are the people you'll rescue from there, the world itself, when you step foot into Hyrule Field, you'll quickly realise that this is the most kind of grounded and realised Zelda game. And it's a little bit unfortunate, actually, because Skyward Sword reverted to a kind of Wind Waker style of... You've got the flying about parts where you're just in the sky and essentially you dive down into each of the locations in that game, and they're very disconnected and disjointed as a result. So in this one, it's kind of harkening back to Ocarina of Time where you can see the locations in the distance, you can see Death Mountain, you can see Castletown and everything and head towards them. But it's on such a bigger scale. Like Hyrule Field is absolutely humongous in this game and it definitely feels it. And I guess that ties in with part of the inspiration behind this game, because apparently it was very much inspired by the Lord of the Rings films, because they were coming out around the time that this game was actually developed as well. So you can definitely see the connection with it in terms of it being a traversal game as much as anything. You're actually moving from place to place and seeing the areas in the distance and heading out on a journey towards them. And the next destination we end up heading to is Kakariko Village, which is shrouded in twilight, much like the forest was earlier on. And we pass through another one of those black walls to get in there, which locks Link back into wolf form. So this is the second instance of meeting the spirit of the area, collecting a bunch of the Tears of Light and restoring it. But as we wander around Kakariko Village, we actually find the kids from earlier. They've actually taken refuge here. They've been looked after by this shaman character. So we search around Kakariko Village for all of these bugs and restore the area back to light and have a nice happy reunion with everybody meeting back up with Link. But that is quickly snatched from us because King Bulbin, the guy from earlier who knocked us out, returns and grabs Colin and runs off. So we hop on Epona. Can't remember if you've got Epona from the start or if it's at this point you unlock Epona actually, but you hop on Epona and give chase, and you end up having this like horseback fighting segment on these rolling hills and stuff, another section of Hyrule Field. And again, the analogues to Lord of the Rings cannot be missed at this point. You know, horseback riding and archery while you're riding and stuff like that is very, very inspired by it. But yeah, eventually we knock King Bulbin off of his boar that he's riding off into a chasm from a bridge, although he will be seen again. And we return back to Kakariko. We get informed that there's some issues with the Gorons, so we head up Death Mountain, only to find that the Gorons are not as friendly as they usually are. And there's not a right lot that Link's able to do with them being so massive and strong. So we actually go back to Auden Village. I think the shaman tells us that somebody in Auden Village should be able to help us out here. So we head back to Auden and speak to the chief of our village, and it turns out he was a sumo wrestler. And he gives us, well, once we defeat him in a sumo wrestling match, he gives us the iron boots that allow us to hold his own ground against the Gorons. So when they like ball up and roll towards us, we can actually stop them and launch them behind us. It's ridiculous. It's the kind of Zelda-like fun that the games are normally known for. But yeah, we sumo wrestle our way up the mountain, only to learn that the patriarch of the Goron tribe has gone mad. So he's actually been imprisoned in the mines, which sets up our next temple. The Death Mountain Temple actually features magnetism as its gimmick, so we actually use the iron boots to walk on walls and ceilings, which is a really cool use. Definitely different to just sinking down in lakes and stuff like that, so we actually end up walking over the top of ceilings and there's lava everywhere and stuff. It's a really, really unique temple. One thing that definitely impressed me is that if you remember the Beamos from Majora's Mask and Ocarina of Time, those like things with an eye on top of them that would rotate around and start lasering you, they actually take a completely new form in this game, a much more realistic form where they're these solid rectangular kind of statue things that spin round, and they do the same thing. They'll look at you and try to laser beam you, although the way of defeating them this time is you shoot an arrow at the gem that kind of controls them, and they will literally just shut down and collapse and then become like a movable block for you to push around into areas. And one area in this temple I remember more than any others, you go through a door and end up in this wide open area with like wooden bridges and platforms leading around everywhere, and there's cranes and stuff like that. And as soon as you set foot out there, you're going to get arrows whizzing past you because there's loads of bokoblins like in the distance on other platforms and stuff just shooting towards you. And that is an absolute like analog to Moria from Lord of the Rings, where they're running through the mines of Moria and they've got the arrows whizzing past them and everything. It's such a clear analog, but that area was not only visually impressive, but you see that this dungeon in particular, it's not just a temple, it's actually used as a mine because you've got these cranes around, and some of the puzzles resolve around you moving the magnetic kind of grippers of these cranes to get to other areas and stuff like that. So It's a very striking temple, definitely in comparison to anything else from other Zelda games, fire temples that are generally just lava, lava, lava. This is lava, 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 but also there's some special magnetic ore that we're getting from this temple, and look, we've actually got infrastructure in here as well. The boss fight of this temple I've always found really cool and interesting as well. You're on this large platform with like 4 chains holding it to the ceiling, and you fight against the patriarch that was mentioned earlier, who's bathed in flame, and you can see he was previously imprisoned. He's got these chains attached to his legs and everything, and you essentially grab hold of those chains and try to make him trip up, but with him being a humongous Goron, you actually have to wear the iron boots to magnet yourself to the floor to be able to trip him up. And at one point the platform falls down into lava, or I think he gets angry probably partway through the fight, breaking the chains that hold the platform there, so it falls down into the lava. So it starts tipping around as well as he's stomping his way around towards you, so you end up putting the boots on to try and regain your balance. So every element of like the actual boss fight is playing around with physics and, you know, traction and whether you can hold your foot and stuff, your footing and such. So it's really interesting in that how even the gameplay mechanics themselves to this game have been more teetered towards realism and real concepts rather than it just being whimsy and fancy. But yeah, after finishing with the Fire Temple, we head to Hyrule Castle next, which is now covered in twilight, like most of Northern Hyrule is at this point. And as you go through Hyrule Castle town, you'll see the kind of shades of, or spirits of, the people there as well. They're not dead when they're trapped in twilight, but they are essentially kind of frozen in, you know, they can just about see things that are in the twilight, but at the same time they kind of can't. It's like they're seeing things out of the corner of their eye. So every single town person you come across is essentially like frozen in fear and, you know, cowering and stuff like that. But yeah, as we explore around the castle town, we can eventually make our way to a bar in the town, and we find a sick Zora child in there who we get it explained to us that Lake Hylia has a drought and there's no water coming from Zora's domain. And whilst we're here, we also find another one of the kids from Auden village. We find Ilya again. So we're definitely motivated towards figuring out what's going on at Lake Hylia, clearing up the twilight and then heading back here. So after we head to Lake Hylia, we end up using this flying twilight creature. I think you fight it first to make it kind of submit to your whim and what you want to do. But this creature grabs us by its talons, and we have this segment where we're controlling it flying up the river towards Zora's domain. And when we get up there, we discover that the area is completely frozen solid, and horrifically, the Zoras are actually frozen under the ice. There's a scene where the camera pans out, looks down, you can see all of the Zora kind of frozen in this almost whirlpool-looking section of water. And I've always found that rather horrific, actually. Like, in Ocarina of Time, the same thing happens. Zora's domain gets frozen over, but you don't see any of the Zoras. Whereas in this game, you actually see them all frozen there. And, I mean it depends how long they've been frozen for, but I don't think they're going to last too much longer if they're completely frozen under there, although gameplay logic would probably permit that. But yeah, in order to resolve the frozen domain, we actually head back to Death Mountain and use Midna's powers to teleport it. So she can't. It's not just that she can teleport you and you get to fast travel around, but she can actually teleport physical things as well. So you actually, multiple times through the game, you'll find these large objects and such, like sections of bridges, and you need to remember where they were because they'll come in handy later. But in this particular one, we grab one of the molten rocks from Death Mountain, teleport it to the frozen Zora's domain, and thaw it out using that, which is such a cool use of random melty rocks. But yeah, at this point we meet the Queen of the Zoras, Queen Rutella, and she tells us that this shadow beasts attacked the domain, killing her, and she sent her son to Hyrule Castletown to warn them of what was happening. So that's the sick Zora child that we met earlier in the bar. So we head back to Castletown, back to the bar, and we rush towards Ilia, because seeing as it's the last kid from Auden Village that we had lost, only to discover that she's lost her memory. She doesn't remember you at all. And I've always found this kind of really impactful and sad, because it's likely from the trauma of everything that's happened, like the kids being kidnapped and everything, that has kind of caused her to lose her memory and want to forget everything that's happened. It's always been a rather poignant section, really. Like, the actions of what's going on in the world have real gravity behind them. It's not just played for jokes or, whimsy like most of the other games. People are actually being hurt here. People are actually being traumatized here. So there's a section at this part where, to try and make the Zora child to heal him and recover him, we have to escort the carriage to Kakariko Village, and I hate this section so much. It's a archery defense section where you've got to try and make sure the cart doesn't get set on fire because bokoblins start chasing after you. And eventually you have another rematch with King Bulbin, who survived being knocked off the last bridge. So this time we knock him off of the Great Hylian Bridge, an even bigger bridge, hoping that he won't return. Spoiler alert, he will. But yeah, this is very much if you've played Smash Brothers, this is the set piece for that, the Great Hylian Bridge, and you've probably seen King Bulbin running across that as one of the stage hazards in that. But after making it back to Kakariko Village and placing the Zora Prince in the shaman's care, his mother, Queen Rutella, her ghost will come back to us and lead us to a graveyard, which is bringing back memories of re-deads and such, but those don't happen, thankfully. But yeah, she rewards us by giving us the Zora armour, which is equivalent to the blue tunic from Ocarina of Time, so that we can deal with the Water Temple. And once we deal with the Water Temple, we end up having all three pieces of an ancient magical artifact called the Fused Twilight, and we head back to the Lanayru Spring, only to be ambushed by Zant, the King of Shadows. And at this point, he mortally wounds Midna, and he actually curses Link, with this shard that kind of heads into his forehead and seems very painful to me, which causes Link to remain stuck in his wolf form. Midna tells us that perhaps Princess Zelda can help us turn back into human form again, but she's clearly absolutely wounded. I think her colours invert at this point. So previously, when she'd been this black and blue kind of colour, she's gone white, and she's hanging limply from Link as she rides there. So you've got this beautiful, sad, emotional music playing in the background as you race your way back to Hyrule Castle, kind of driving you on to get there as quickly as possible and try and turn back into a human and heal Midna. And when you do meet Zelda, she isn't able to break the curse on Link, but she is able to save Midna. And in a surprising turn of events, she actually sacrifices herself in order to restore Midna. And I remember there's a scene when Midna realizes what's happening. She looks absolutely horrified that Zelda is sacrificing herself for Midna, and it really ups the stakes of the game from this point on, because we've essentially lost Princess Zelda, and Zelda thought it was more important for Midna to survive than herself. And the only information we have in terms of a cure for Link is that we should try and head to the Sacred Grove and find the Master Sword, which, running thing in every Zelda game. Master Sword cures all evils. But yeah, the Master Sword is capable of breaking Link's curse, and we encounter another kind of Ocarina of Time reference here, which is a Skull Kid who summons puppets to fight us. And it's really interesting when you're chasing after him because he actually plays Saria's song from Ocarina of Time. So it's kind of like connecting those two games together again. But like many Skull Kids, he's just playing around. He kind of says thanks for the fun game once you defeat him. And eventually you'll head to the Sacred Grove, find the ruins of the Temple of Time and the Master Sword, which manages to lift the curse on Link. And at this point, he actually becomes free to transform to and from wolf form at will. So it opens up loads of new areas and discoveries in the game. And I should probably mention at this point, I think you can do it before the ability to transfer back and forth from wolf form, but you can find these. I don't know what to call them other than howl stones. They're these stones that have wind blowing through them, playing like a particular song from Zelda games in the past, and you can howl at them in wolf form. So instead of playing an ocarina or an instrument like the other games, or the conducting with the Wind Waker, you actually howl in wolf form, which is super adorable. But yeah, if you do these, you will actually meet a skeletal hero who is Link from the past. Badumtish. It's a previous incarnation of Link who will pass on his skills and knowledge to the current incarnation of Link, aka you. And I always found that really cool as well. It feels like another connection to Ocarina of Time, and it's another hero who our version of Link that we're playing up can look up to and be inspired by, and even in death is like fighting for the betterment of Hyrule. And I think he actually says that he's got regrets from not being recognised as a hero and being unable to pass on like what he learned in his lifetime to those who came after him. And I think it's only from like the Hyrule Historia and stuff like that it's explained that this hero, this version of Link, was the version who did Ocarina of Time, but at the end of that game, Zelda sends him back in time so that he can relive his childhood instead of, just skipping all that portion of his life. And Ganondorf actually gets captured before he can even complete the plot of Ocarina of Time. So Link is a hero, but nobody remembers him, and that's probably why this skeletal version of him is so kind of solemn, because he did all that stuff but nobody knows about it because obviously he was sent to the past. So yeah, I've always found that a really cool joining together of the games. It's like the most connected the games have ever felt in my mind. But yes, recovered with the Master Sword in hand and ready to get his own back on Zant, who has stolen all of the fused shadow we previously collected, we head to the Gerudo Desert and towards the Arbiter's grounds to find the Mirror of Twilight, which is kind of like the connection portal between the actual Twilight realm and the main kind of realm of Hyrule. Only to discover that the mirror has been shattered and that Zant isn't the one pulling the strings. We meet some sages here who tell us a bit about what's happened, and it turns out that Ganondorf, dun dun dun, has actually manipulated Zant with promises of power, and of course Ganondorf is the true antagonist of the game, because when is he not? So our new task at this point is to find the shards of the mirror to be able to get through and recover the fused shadow. And I won't go into too much detail on a kind of play-by-play of all the other areas, but we do visit a snowy mountain area with the equivalent of Yeti people and find a really creepy mansion that I've always found creepy. And we recover another shard from the Temple of Time in the Sacred Grove, and we get this weird item called the Dominion Rod, which I think at this part of the game doesn't do anything. It's literally just a stick. But yeah, this whole portion of the game is played out much like an investigation. The bar owner from earlier, Telma, Her assistants are scattered throughout the land trying to help you find the pieces of the mirror. So they keep telling you these rumours of, oh, somebody's seen this thing in Zora's domain, somebody's seen something over here. So it's kind of like an investigative portion of the game. But eventually we get summoned back to Kakariko Village. I'm pretty sure we probably get a letter, because there is a mailman in this game who will run up to you with his he does his own rendition of the dun, 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 when he gives you a letter, which is adorable. But yeah, we get summoned back to Kakariko Village because there may be a way to recover Ilya's memory. And this leads us on a trip to a hidden village, which has this kind of western cowboyish aesthetic and segment as well, where you're riding along trying to shoot bokoblins. And I think that probably inspired that whole Link's crossbow training game. But yeah, you find this this necklace and bring it back to Ilya. And once her memory's recovered, she remembers that she was also waiting for a heavenly messenger carrying a rod of the heavens, and gives us this ancient sky book. And if you're thinking about that now, if you haven't thought about Twilight Princess for a while, and you know, you perhaps listen to this episode having not played it for a while, you might start to click on here that, hold on, we're talking about sky stuff now, which is interesting. It's this is the part of the game that really fascinated me, like when I was originally playing it, because it keeps talking about heavenly messengers, the rod of the heavens, and we keep meeting these Uku who claim to be like sky people from the sky. So what was actually up there? Why is it all, you know, ancient? And eventually we get his answer. We gather some magical letters from owl statues, another link to older Zelda games, and we find a cannon that literally shoots us up into the sky, which is ridiculous, but we land on a city in the sky. This felt to me like you were discovering some long-lost secret, like going around the land, finding these ancient statues, using this rod of the heavens on them, and getting this different language. And especially when you get up to the city in the sky, it's like, why is there a whole city up here that has all this advanced technology? It's got these turbines keeping the place afloat and stuff. And I can't remember if it's actually mentioned in the games. I think there are some glyphs in the temple, like if you look at the textures on the wall or something, showing Hylians and the Uku and stuff like that. But I remember being fixated on this thing of like, did the Hylians come from the sky? And, you know, little did we know until the sequel, Skyward Sword, was revealed that, yeah, the Hylians did actually come from the sky. So it's almost like, in retrospect, this city in the sky is a leftover from that bygone era. You know, nobody knows about the worlds in the sky anymore. And who knows, by the time of Twilight Princess, that might be one of the only floating lands left in existence. So it's always been a really fascinating part of the lore to me. But yeah, we fight a dragon in this temple, and after we defeat the dragon, the pair now have all of the pieces of the Twilight Mirror, and they head to the penultimate dungeon of the game, the Twilight Palace. In the Twilight Palace, we fight against plenty of Twilight beasts and solve the usual fare of Zelda puzzles, but we come up against Zan and have what I can only describe as a pretty comical boss fight against him. You can tell he's not the ultimate evil or anything like that, because he's pretty silly with his moveset and how he fights you and stuff like that. And after you defeat him, Zant actually reveals that Ganondorf has been reborn, and it was his fault that a new kind of twilight barrier has covered Hyrule Castle when you originally went to meet Zelda again. So now that Midna has the fused shadow, you've got all the pieces of it. You return back to Hyrule Castle, and she uses the power of it to break through the barrier, and you storm Hyrule Castle, which at this point has been completely taken over by Ganondorf and his forces. So you fight tons and tons of monsters, bokoblins. You fight King Bulbin once again, because he still hasn't given up. I think once you defeat him at this stage, though, he does kind of give you a bit of a nod of respect, expecting this is enough, you keep beating me, I'm not going to bother again. But you also fight some dark nuts in here as well. Those are the soldiers wearing heavy armour from previous games and that, and these are always really cool fights. But yeah, eventually we have our epic battle against Ganondorf. He's got many phases in this boss fight, like more than any other game, I believe. At one point he even transforms into his, in air quotes, god form, and Midna has to take him on using the power of the Fused Shadow, and the fight actually destroys Hyrule Castle as well. So you and Zelda are kind of looking on from Hyrule Field, and Midna's defeated, and Ganondorf chases after you on horseback. So you have a horse battle segment of the final boss fight as well. Zelda summons some light arrows which you can use to shoot at him, and eventually we knock him off his horse and finish the fight off on foot. So it's just like the end of the game is this adrenaline-fueled series of fights against Ganondorf, and I really don't think it's ever been topped by any other Zelda game since then. Like even Breath of the Wild, where you've got the gigantic form of Ganon, that's very much kind of like a scripted segment more than anything else. Like this one feels like a full-on battle. You've even got bokoblins riding along trying to harass you as well on the horseback segment. So it's definitely one of the most epic final bosses in Zelda game history. But yeah, once Ganondorf has been defeated and things wind down, we return to the Mirror Chamber, where Midna is planning to return to the realm of Twilight. So you say your goodbyes, and she's reverted back to her original form, which is not a small little imp creature like she is for the most of the game. She turns into like a full-size being. And she sheds a single tear which shatters the mirror, so the only gateway between Hyrule and the Twilight Realm is completely gone, never to be seen again. And yeah, the companion that you've had with you since the start of the game is gone forever, so it's quite a sad moment really at the end. But yeah, Twilight Princess presents such a uniquely fleshed out world. Like all of the characters are meaningful, they all have their own storylines, their own relevance to the plot. There's impact of your actions or the actions of others, like the trauma that Ilia suffers and stuff like that. And the presentation of the world itself, it's just such a grounded and realised version of Zelda. Every character as well, even Link himself, is seen as this grown-up, more mature character that it's easy to understand why it's a world that I wanted to escape into at the time. And it's I do think it's such a hugely missed opportunity that the HD version of the game hasn't been re-released on Switch. No doubt if it is released in the future, it'll be a Switch 2 exclusive for no good reason, and probably expensive as well. But yeah, if you do get the chance to pick up a Wii or a GameCube version and give it a shot, definitely recommend it. But yes, that was my Zelda game. And I wonder, which Zelda game is yours? Thank you so much for listening to this episode. Honestly, I had a bit of a hard time recording this episode because it kind of felt like at parts I was just giving a kind of rundown of the plot, really, which seems a little boring, honestly. And also my voice kept kind of, you know that feeling when the back of your throat starts kind of closing up a little bit and it feels like you need to cough. I was battling with that for a little bit, so yeah, a bit of a more difficult one to record. But please do leave your thoughts or any feedback and comments on either the YouTube comments, you can leave them in our Discord, or on the Patreon itself as well. I have set Patreon up now so that anybody who supports the show on there is able to get episodes a week in advance. So if you are eager for the next episode, that's one thing to consider. And any support towards the show means I can invest in like a better microphone and plugins and setups, and buying game soundtracks as well to put throughout the episode, because they're a bit hard to dig out sometimes. But yes, regardless of any of that, I do hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope you have yourself a cracking weekend, and perhaps you'll visit Hyrule yourself, and if so, do tell me about it. But yes, I hope you will join us next week for episode 5, simulated socialization. Nailed it. Have a good one.